And yeah, most stadiums I've really been to have been what I expected, if not much better. So it's it's been a fantastic trip. I'm just seeing some amazing stadiums.
That is very, very cool. I'm super excited. And you know what? They might have cut us out. They might have cut out the little WinBet promotion that I did there. So I'm just going to remind the folks one more time, really quick, before we dive in, that we are the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the WinBet. WinBet is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odd bets, WinBet has what you need to win. Sign up today, bet $100 and get $100 free bet at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/winbet. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/winbet. Okay, I think it started late. I was having a little connection issue, so I thought we already had done the little promo there. So, but welcome again, everybody. I think they caught a lot of that of what you did there. But yeah, well, like I was telling, if they missed the beginning part, Andy is traveling through America. He went to 14 different games, which is crazy over just, what is that, 6-week span? That's nuts. Yeah. So what break it down for me. What's your favorite? What are a couple of your favorite spots to see a game so far out of the ones you've been to?
I think just location-wise, and to visit for non-sport-wise, I'd say Chicago has been my favorite place. I just love everything about where that is and sort of what you can do in Chicago. But in terms of the stadiums, I think to look at aesthetically, I think has to be for me either the Viking Stadium, US Bank, or both of them were just. Seattle actually was one of them actually as well. Just you go in there and it just takes your breath away about how the atmosphere to just how it looks. So I think those two really stood out for me. But for atmosphere, nothing beats Arrowhead. I mean, it was a division game, which helped, and it was a prime night football game against the Raiders. But even so, it just made it just. It was. I can't say enough of that atmosphere in Arrowhead. I mean, one really wants to go because I'm a big fan of Mahomes, and I've loved seeing Arrowhead on TV, and I've heard so much about the decibels and about how loud it can get, and it was everything I hoped for and more. It really was, and I know it means a lot to you as well. But and yeah, it just was. Yeah, an incredible day. And also, really, apart from last night, everywhere I've been, it's been mostly warm. I mean, Chicago was cold, but, went to Jacksonville, it was really warm. New Orleans, Atlanta, Houston, it's just been, I've not needed really a coat, really, mostly at all. It's been mostly, T-shirt and shorts weather, which has made it, that much better as well.
Hey, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you enjoyed Arrowhead. I actually was able to make it to Arrowhead for the Buffalo Bills game. Not quite. It didn't end up good. It didn't end up right, unfortunately, like the Raiders game. That was an exciting game. My Chiefs pulled out. The Bills game, we came up short. I thought we were right there with them the whole time, though. It was a great atmosphere. Bills fans were there in force. They definitely travel well, and a shout out to them. They were already at all the barbecue spots when I got in town. They're pretty smart.
Yeah, no, that's a fan base. I mean, I've seen some great fan bases travel. Like I've seen the Giants travel to Jacksonville, and they traveled well. Same as Baltimore with Tampa Bay, and Philadelphia actually was quite good last week at Houston. But overall, I mean, the Buffalo Bills fan base is just one that, even though not a big fan of the team myself, being a Dolphins fan, but you gotta give credit to that fan base because they support their team through thick and thin in the years gone by. And you see in the tailgates, you see the fans whenever they go to any game. It's a massive party essentially, and it's just they do bring the atmosphere to the stadiums.
Oh man, yeah, it's it'll be exciting. I expect to see them again, unfortunately, in the playoffs. So it'll be another exciting matchup. But with that, we'll dive in here. I usually start off these shows for starting off about the Thursday night matchup. Another great Amazon Prime matchup here. We got the Atlanta Falcons versus the Carolina Panthers. That the matchup everyone wanted to see all week. So I don't know how Amazon Prime gets all these terrible football games, but Carolina won 25-15. Obviously, the Falcons struggled on offense. They seem to be they're ranked pretty highly on offense for the year, but it just seems like it's just such a slow-paced offense that it seems like they were bound to have some games like this, and I think you'll have some more coming up here. Marcus Mariota only 19 of 30, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. People were calling for Desmond Ridder last night. Drake London did have, a had a touchdown, which is nice. 5 receptions for 38 yards, which isn't great, but 1 touchdown saved his fantasy day. Do you have any impressions of, do you think? I personally think that this is going to be a little bit more of the offense going forward. I think they've kind of gotten a little bit lucky this year in scoring as many points as they have. Do you see this is a fluke game, or do you see kind of the offense continuing to struggle going forward as we go down the stretch here?
Yeah, I think, Mariota, I think we all saw in Tennessee what kind of quarterback he was, and it was very much, not anything special. And I think, he had a good few weeks in Atlanta, but I think we saw in this game especially that, he's had his honeymoon period now in Atlanta. And for me now, I think this will be the story going forward. And I think we will see the point, whether it's, next week, whether it's just the final week of the season or something. But I think they drafted him for a reason. I think that eventually Mariota was probably knew he probably knew he was going to be, a bridge quarterback for the next one. You feel, the more this goes on and he keeps playing like this, I can't see it being too long before Ridder does eventually come in and start for them.
Yeah, I mean, they still, I think when I looked at it yesterday, I have the playoff odds written down here somewhere. I still think that they have like the 8th or 9th best odds to make it in the playoffs, which is insane right now. I think that's going to drop off a little bit here. Oh, I do have it right here. No, they're not in the top 7 right now. Oh, so maybe they are a little. Maybe I think they're 10th or 11th. So they're a little bit lower. But yeah, I think that'll continue to decrease here. And yeah, I do. I would not be surprised if they end up going to Desmond Ridder as they begin to look toward 2023 and potentially one of those first-round quarterbacks that there are many of. On the Carolina side, another disappointing game for DJ Moore. Laviska Shenault got a nice touchdown. I don't think there's much to see there. He's not someone I'm rushing to add or anything like that. But the highlight of the game was Deontay Foreman, 31 carries, 130 yards, and a touchdown, entering that workhorse role. We didn't see much Chuba Hubbard. I didn't get a chance. I was bartending, and I can't watch the game anymore. Thanks, Jeff Bezos, because of he has it stuck on Prime, and these TVs I have aren't smart TVs. But so I'd have to read up a little bit on Hubbard's health and how he was feeling last night. But, it is Deontay Foreman's backfield right now. Do you have any impressions on his game at the moment?
Yeah, I think for me, Foreman, he was the main sort of go-to guy. I mean, you saw PJ Walker. I mean, looking at his stats again, he only got 5.72 points on a standard sleeper league, 108 yards, only 10 from 16 completions wise. And yeah, he had 3 carries rushing for 14 yards. So I think we saw with the Panthers, especially now they've got interim coach and Steve Wilkes rather than Matt Rule. I think we are seeing what the offense is going to look like under Steve Wilkes. I think it's going to be run first. Foreman had a lot of success. I mean, even the touchdown from I think it was Laviska Shenault was pretty much a lot of time was yards after catch. So I think we've seen a lot of the Panthers in this game, and I think we will see it moving forward, especially now Christian McCaffrey is no longer there. I think we're going to see a lot of Foreman. I think more than Hubbard. I think Hubbard only had 5 carries or something like that in the game. So I don't think he had the carries that shows to me that he's going to be the guy you want in fantasy. And I think that D'Onta Foreman, especially, if you've already had him, picked him late in the draft, I think perfect. And I think there's a lot of leagues, I imagine, that no one's got him because no one probably had him in their minds come the start of the year with Christian McCaffrey there. So I think he's definitely someone you can pick up now. I think he's someone you can get either in a waiver wire or just as a free agent. And I do think that if you have got him, I do recommend maybe not as a running back 1 or running back 2, but I think certainly as a flex option. I think there's no harm in putting him in your team.
I ended up I have a lot of leagues with Deontay Foreman just because I got him off the waiver wire a couple weeks ago, and I took him out of like half. I have him in like 8 leagues. I'm in a ton. But I took him out of like half of them just because I was, I just wasn't sure about his workload. I didn't know how much Chuba Hubbard was going to get, and I wish I just would have left him in. So that's a little bit disappointing. But before we dive into some fantasy football headlines going into Week 10, ready to win more money and boost your odds? WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. We're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting and casino play. Exclusive rewards and rights at your fingertips with Wynn Rewards and on WynnBET. Be on the lookout for the WynnBET Win Hour each Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. During WynnBET Win Hour, marquee games of the week will have better odds on WynnBET, giving you a larger payout opportunity. Great promos, odds, and payouts are happening right now at WynnBET, from boosted same-day game game parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport, WynnBET has what you need to win. Ready to play? Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet $100, win $100. There's so much to choose from. All you have to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET so they know we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast/WYNNBT to claim your free bet today. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right. The first headline I had up for this week was the TJ Hawkinson debut. That seemed like it was the big trade last week. TJ Hawkinson going for a second-round pick from Detroit to Minnesota Vikings. He had a great start. 9 receptions, 70 yards. He was the tight end 5 last week. Ran a route on 83.7% of plays, which is elite for a tight end. I thought it was a great debut. I didn't move him up much my fantasy football rankings or anything like that on the move. I thought he could continue being that kind of mid-tier tight end 1 still. But it was a great debut, and I think what we could see is a little bit more consistency because that Vikings offense is a little bit better. So, what were some of your impressions on TJ Hawkinson and on his debut and what we can expect going forward?
Yeah, I actually on fantasy I made a trade about a fortnight before the trade went through. I traded. It seemed silly at the time. I traded away because basically we had too many wide receivers, and I didn't want to get rid of Cup, Diggs, even OBJ because I think he will move somewhere and do well. So I had to get rid of someone, and I picked Pittman purely because of the quarterback situation, which made no sense because I then traded Hawkinson for Pittman, which looked silly at the time. But then I think with the Colts, the Colts issues at quarterback, Sam Ehlinger is currently doing it, but he's not exactly lighting it up. So I think Hawkinson, now he's playing under a much more exciting and dynamic offense in Minnesota compared to Detroit. I do think that he's definitely a tight end. Well, I don't think you get the same points, as the likes of Mark Andrews and the sort of standard main 2 you want. But I think certainly as a 3rd or 4th option for tight end, I think he's certainly a guy you can look at because they're going to be looking for, they'll be going for the playoffs. They're not looking to, get the first overall pick or anything like that. I think the Vikings can be looking for playoffs and try and win this division. And I think certainly if your league ends in week 14, which may well be when they win the division, I think they'll certainly be a team to have players for. Justin Jefferson will have the main targets, but I think you look at then it's Thielen and Hawkinson, and I think either one of them two is going to get you points because teams are going to, they're going to double coverage. Jefferson, they're going to double team him. They're going to their game plan's going to be around trying to stop Jefferson. So I think as a 2nd or 3rd option receiving, I think you got Thielen, get him as well. But I think Hawkinson, I think it's definitely a tight end you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just it's just going to be a little bit more consistent in Minnesota because Jared Goff, as the pass rush comes, you kind of see his play go as well. And kind of TJ Hawkinson, there was a lot of mouths to feed too. You had the running game with Jamal Williams. DeAndre Swift was going to command a lot of targets. Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Shark at the beginning of the year. So I do think it's a little bit more clear for TJ Hawkinson to be that second target a lot of weeks behind Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen will mix in there too. But yeah, it is exciting for TJ Hawkinson. I do think he doesn't move too much in my rankings still. I still have him behind Dallas Goedert. And so he still kind of fits into that mid tight end 1, 6-ish, 5, 6, 7 range. So but I do think it unlocks some upside for him. So I am excited about that for TJ Hawkinson. On to the next one here. It's just been all those quarterback 1s in fantasy drafts that we had. All like the Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, all those late round that we were like, man, these are going to be some great values. They're going to have a great season. They are struggling this year. I'm just going to read off a list here for you. Justin Herbert, quarterback 13 in fantasy points per game. Tom Brady, quarterback 22 in fantasy points per game. Derek Carr is 23rd in fantasy points per game. Russell Wilson is 24th. Aaron Rodgers is 25th. And Matthew Stafford is 29th in fantasy points per game. Those are all courtesy of Fantasy Pros, except for Justin Herbert's teetering on quarterback 1 territory. That's not anywhere close to his draft where he was going in drafts though as a top 3 quarterback. Tom Brady is barely a quarter, and Derek Carr barely quarterback 2. Is Russell Wilson quarterback 24, barely a quarterback 2. And Rodgers and Stafford haven't even been quarterbacks in Superflex leagues. That's I have a dynasty Superflex league where my starters are Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford, and you can guess how my season's been going. It's already over in that one. I'm already looking toward next year. It's outrageous, but I think it's over for most of these guys. I think we can, if you're in a redraft league, you can cut them. I think there are better options. I would rather be starting Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff going forward. I'm not saying that they can't get it, but if you have the bench space, keep them on your bench. But these players are not starters anymore, in my opinion. They've already cost fantasy managers some playoff spots. So, do you see any of the guys I listed? Do you see any paths to redemption for any of these guys down the stretch?
I don't think. I think Rodgers is one you certainly need to look at getting rid of, because I think their schedule is brutal. They've got to play the Dallas Cowboys and the Eagles in the next 2 games. They've still got to play Miami. They've still got to play all these teams that are fighting for playoffs. But I think the Buccaneers is one that I think they can turn it around, because we saw the Falcons lost last night. So that division, they're already leading it. They can go 2 wins clear of the Falcons in the NFC South. With the Saints and Panthers not looking great either, I do think that they can win the division maybe with 6, 7, 8, 9 wins. But I do think that we saw with the Buccaneers win against the Rams, I think we saw Tom Brady showing some life left. I think he showed in that fourth quarter comeback. And I think that may be the win, a bit like the Chiefs last year. I think that could be the win that ignites their season. I think they're still currently, the 4th seed in the NFC, the current playoff picture. So I think they are a team. He's a player, that I think you should definitely keep. And I've actually started him over Stafford now in one of my leagues, because I think with their upcoming schedule, they've got to play next. They've got to play Seattle and Germany. And then they've got to bye. And then they've got to play the Cleveland Browns and the New Orleans Saints. They've still got to play the Falcons and Panthers and the Cardinals. And so I think they've got some winnable games. And I think that, even though he's not got the same help he had in recent years, he's still got Godwin and Evans, but he's not got that 3rd or 4th choice that he had in recent years. But I do think he's the one out of those ones you mentioned that can potentially turn it around and get you points on fantasy.
Yeah, I like that pick. Tom Brady still has weapons as well, which I think it's important to note. A lot of these quarterbacks on the list, Justin Herbert, no Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen, Derek Carr, Hunter Renfrow has been in and out of the lineup. Darren Waller has been injured, and he just went on injured. Both players just went on injured reserve, so it's hard to expect things to continue there. Russell Wilson, that offense is just out of sync. The offensive line hasn't been playing that well. The play calling's questionable. Aaron Rodgers, there's no receiving weapons to speak of really outside of Allen Lazard. And Stafford, the offensive line is really struggling. The Tampa Bay offensive line is struggling too. But you see Mike Evans, Chris Godwin on that lineup, and it's just hard not to have a little bit of hope. So Tom Brady would be my pick there too. And if Mike Williams and Keenan Allen can get back shortly, I think Justin Herbert is just a great quarterback. So you could see that as well. And the last thing here before we jump into the underdog stuff here is Justin Fields. Man, what a turnaround. It's just been an incredible, last few weeks for him. He's 8th in fantasy points per game already, 4 straight quarterback 1 performances. And he's been sub 210 passing yards in every single game. But he's only, and he's 26th, and the Chicago Bears are 26th in the NFL in pass attempts. So he's really making all this production with his legs, and it's really paid off dividends for fantasy football. He was unstartable. We were wondering if he was going to make it through the year. At the first few weeks, and now he's been stellar. This is just kind of that cheat code with rushing quarterbacks, in my opinion. They'll always have some value, especially if they can get anything going offensively. He doesn't really even need to pass, but it is encouraging, I think, just to see how well he's playing with the weapons that he has around him. Just considering what Aaron Rodgers is struggling with, and Matthew Stafford and all these other great quarterbacks are struggling without receiving weapons. And you see Justin Fields making the most of it. I think that, this is great, great indicator for his future, and I'm moving him up into quarterback 1 territory in my dynasty rankings. What are some impressions of Justin Fields so far?
Yeah, I think we've seen in recent weeks especially, he's really turned it up a notch. I mean, he's gone to sleeper. He's the 8th best quarterback overall this season. He's had 3 straight 20 points or more performances on fantasy. He was the number 1 ranked quarterback in week 9 points-wise. He was 4th in week 8, and he's 5th in week 7. And the next 2 games he's got is games that I really think you should look out for, because he's got to play the Detroit Lions and Atlanta Falcons, who have the 7th and 6th worst run defenses this season, respectively. And Atlanta also have the worst pass defense, Lions the 8th worst. So I think, they're both these teams they're playing in the next 2 games. They're both struggling both the field defensively. And I think with the Claypool addition as well, I think he's got a weapon to throw to now. So I think he is definitely someone that, people should look out for starting in fantasy, because he's just, I think, especially Dynasty, because I think we've now seen him as well. He can perform, and he is showing signs of being the quarterback we all saw impressing us at Ohio State. So I do think that the Bears can go, especially next year, if they draft a good receiver or if they get one in free agency. Not that there's a lot of good receivers out there, really. I do think he's someone that you should look for, because he's shown now what he can do. And he's just, that touchdown he scored against the Dolphins was just electric. And it was just, was it 61 yards, I think it was, or something. And he just tore, even though it's a bad defense at the moment, I think he absolutely tore us apart. And I think that he was unlucky not to get the win, really, with the whole defensive pass interference missed call. And I think that he is showing me a lot of signs that he is someone that he can trust on fantasy football.
Yeah, he just has upside that few quarterbacks actually have in this game. You see he's electric. He has that Lamar Jackson electricness, that Jalen Hurts, he's, even more so even than Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, with his pure rushing ability. So definitely exciting for fantasy football. I'm going to be looking here. It would be really easy for me to continue moving up my rankings with his kind of upside. So super excited about that. With that, we're just about to dive into some of the Underdog DFS this weekend. But before we do, going to pay this last round of bills. Just remind you about the SGPN merch store. Get your holiday shopping done early at the SGPN merch store. SGPN gear is the perfect stocking stuffer for the G-Gen in your life. I really like all, I love the sweatshirts. I love all the beanies, just as we go into wintertime. I've been stocking up on a lot of those, a lot of super new colors and cool new colors and everything like that. So we're excited about that. Plus, from now until Thanksgiving, you can get 10% off when you use the promo code DallasSucks. That's store.com, sportsgamblingpodcast.com, promo code DallasSucks. That's hilarious. Obviously, we have some Dallas Cowboy haters at the top of our SGPN hierarchy there. So that's hilarious. I remember, I believe it was Sean or Kramer, one of our head guys there. He was mentioning that. I love that. So, use your hatred of Dallas to save some money at the SGPN merch store this week. So that's super funny. But with that, we're going to dive into some Underdog Battle Royale, just to explain it because it's a brand. It is a pretty new platform. Underdog's a new company. They're fantastic. It's my favorite new place to play fantasy football. But just to explain to people, it's a 55,000 person tournament. And it divides into 6-person drafts. And this is just like DFS, except without salary. We're doing a draft. You go into 6-person drafts, 6 rounds. You draft 6 players, 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 flex position. So it's a little bit shallower than your average DFS lineup. Only 36 players are taken in total. But yeah, you get thrown into that larger 55,000 pool tournament, and the grand prize is $50,000 with lots of lower prizes. Lower than that as well. So it's super fun. It's just a different kind of strategy with DFS. Underdog does a great job. So with that, I want to dive into some strategy talk really quick. Just to Andy, I know that Underdog is unavailable in the UK yet. Hopefully y'all get it there soon. But so you don't specifically play Underdog, which is absolutely fine. We're just going to be going to you for some player takes here. But what I do tell people in this is that the quarterback position is so important in these Underdog Battle Royales because every single week so far, the grand prize winners had a top 3 quarterback performance. There's only 6 quarterbacks drafted in total in these drafts. So we're looking for really high-end outcomes here. So I always end up I have a list of players that, that I would consider, drafting. Most of the quarterbacks in this league don't have that kind of upside to win you that grand prize money. So just going off this list here, I have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa, and Kyler Murray, and Trevor Lawrence as my quarterbacks that I'm going to be drafting this week. And you can get a little bit more contrarian in that if you're doing a lot of drafts, but in most of my drafts, I'll be sticking with these guys. Starting off with the number 1 quarterback on the slate, he's going and just so you know as well, people are catching on to this. So, the quarterbacks in these drafts as well go in the first, go really early. Patrick Mahomes is the 5th player taken right now. How do you like that matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars this weekend?
I think get as many Chiefs offensive players as you can because I think the Jags have got the ninth worst pass defense, whereas they've got the 10th best run defense. So their struggles in defense has really come in the form of the passing game. And I think that, in this game especially, you've got a lot of options. Mahomes, for me, I've started him in my DraftKings lineup because he is just someone that I think, for me, he's been the best quarterback this year on the field, regardless of fantasy football. So I think added to fantasy as well, a guy that can use his legs, obviously a guy that can throw the ball really well. I think that he is someone that you should definitely look to add because, and even going on further than that, look at Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman especially. On Sleeper, Juju got 18.80 in week 9, 25.40 points in week 7, and then week 6 he got 22.30, which means he's got 111.20 points already in 2022, which is more than he had in 2021, and he's just 2 points away from having more than what he had then in 2019. And then Mecole Hardman had just under 20 points in week 9 on Sleeper, 28 points in week 7, and then week 6, 12.20. And I think this is why Mahomes is my, since the MVP vote quarterback-wise, he'd be my vote out of any quarterback because, we've seen Tua perform adding Hill, but Mahomes is performing to the same level without him. And I think, we're now seeing a more balanced chief offense. So we're seeing, obviously, Kelsey still the number one guy, but apart from that, you've still got, Hardman and MVS, of course, is the fourth choice. So that's not a bad fourth choice to have. So I think if you're going to take Chiefs players, I think I would definitely look at, obviously, Kelsey's one as well, tight end wise, but in terms of the receiver game, Juju or Mecole Hardman, but quarterback wise, I think of all the quarterbacks you mentioned, especially with Josh Allen, potentially not playing this week, I do think that Mahomes is a must. I think if you're drafting or setting up your lineup or whatever form of fantasy you do, I think Mahomes should be your number one choice because he's just going to get point after points against this pretty poor Jacksonville defense.
Yes, they ranked 21st against the pass. I think I have here 22nd in yards allowed. 22nd yards allowed. And it's 21st against opposing quarterbacks here. So that's a good matchup for him. What I tell people, I always try to give people stacking option. Most of the grand prize winner in the Underdog DFS tournaments have a single stack option. It's such a shallow pool that I always tell people it's hard to double stack. It's very few because we're looking for super high-end outcomes. We're trying to hit that kind of perfect lineup with it being so shallow, and it's really hard for two wide receivers on the same team to kind of get that kind of high-end outcome. So in the Underdog DFS, we're looking for single stack options. Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes both have first round. Travis Kelsey is on average the first or second player taken in the draft. So it's going to be really hard to stack those two together. But Juju is a great stacking option. His ADP is 24.1. So you can kind of get him at that 4th and 5th round turn. He would go great with Patrick Mahomes this weekend. He's cleared 100 yards in 2 of his past 3 games. He's really establishing himself as the wide receiver 1 in that offense. But if you're doing a lot of drafts and you can somehow get Kelsey and Pat, either Kelsey or Patrick Mahomes in that second round, absolutely do it. So the next one I have up here is Josh Allen. Josh Allen's ADP is 20.1. That is clearly because of his health and people anticipate the risk of him not playing this weekend. And that's just kind of the risk when you play Underdog. The draft is locked in. So once you draft and you drafted Josh Allen and he doesn't play, there's no saving you after that. So I get kind of a little bit of the hesitation, but I still like the upside there. Grabbing Josh Allen in the 4th round, you're getting a lot of risk baked in already in that price. The Vikings are 23rd against opposing fantasy quarterbacks and 27th in the pass yards defense. Do you have any insight on, if we're going to see Josh Allen this weekend? It's kind of tough right now. Do you, and if we do see him, do you anticipate him having any kind of, being limited at all?
Yeah, I looked at his, before this podcast, I was looking at sort of the latest on what Josh Allen's status is, and they're saying they're taking it 1 hour at a time. There's a lot of uncertainty whether he'll play. And I think that, to me, is why I don't really like the thought of any player in this game on fantasy because, Case Keenum plays, I can't see Diggs getting the points you need, and the Bills' defense is so strong. I think, I want to say, I don't think it's in prime time, but it might be in prime time. But, even though they're playing really well, I think against this Buffalo defense, their main struggles have been in terms of the rushing game, compared to their passing game, which obviously is the number one in the league, or one of the top ones in the league. Looking at yards allowed this season, they're 5th when it comes to passing yards allowed overall, and when it comes to rushing yards, they're 6th. So I think that defense is pretty much, if you exclude last week, it's been really good all year, and it's been really good the last 2 or 3 years. So I think this is the one game I think the Vikings can really struggle in, and I think they. But I think, if Josh Allen plays, I think it's a question of whether he's even 100% fit. If he is, then definitely go for him and Diggs. But if it's Case Keenum playing, I think that with the struggles they have in the running game, I don't like anyone in this game really, because I don't really rate the Vikings to get past the Bills defense, and I don't think they'll get the points offensively if Case Keenum's playing.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I think a lot of this does stem on the health of Josh Allen. I do think this game could get a little bit ugly if Josh Allen doesn't play. Bills trying to control the ball. Bills defense clamping down. If Josh Allen's out there flinging touchdown passes, you could just see you could see the Bills defense sit back a little bit. Kirk Cousins just throwing that ball around, could get a lot of garbage time fantasy points. So a lot of this does hinge on the health of Josh Allen. I still like that risk there at the 4th and 5th round, though. The next one I have up here, Justin Fields. He is the average on between the 13th and 14th player taken. And that's in that third round range. Lots of upside there. Detroit's 29th against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy points per game. This is kind of that dream matchup. Aaron Rodgers wasn't able to take advantage this week. We talked a little bit about it. It's hard to take too many quarterbacks over Justin Fields this week. Am I right?
Yeah, I think the only quarterback you take over him is probably Mahomes. I think that from everything I said before about this pass defense he's up against and run defense in Detroit, I just think that if you can't get Mahomes, the next quarterback you should get by far is Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's in my DraftKings lineups this weekend. I will be using Justin Fields as my cash play. I'm feeling really good about that. Important to note, this was one I would leave alone on the stack. I think Justin Fields is going to get a lot of production with his legs. I don't think it's a necessity that you do stack Justin Fields in these Battle Royale lineups. I think you can just roll Justin Fields out there naked, and he will deliver just fine. So I have next up here, who's having a great year himself, Tua. He's 18th player taken. He's number 1 in QBR right now. He's had a very impressive year. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill are obviously a big part of that. But what are you seeing from Tua right now?
I think, my podcast no one was a bigger critic than me the last couple of years, maybe apart from Colin Coward.
You're a Dolphins fan. This is perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to put my hat on, actually. I'm going to put my hat on.
There we go.
Some sort of loyalty towards my team. And I've been his biggest critic the last 2 years. I mean, when we drafted him, I was so excited. And then the first 2 years, I was basically not impressed with what I saw. But, I've turned around completely now, and I'm a complete Tua believer. And I really think there's not many quarterbacks I have over him, because everyone can talk about the underthrows. Everyone can talk about the fact that Tyreek Hill is making him look better than he is. But for me, he's still putting the balls in the right places, and he's only thrown 3 interceptions all year. I think one of them was the Bengals game, where, of course, he had that concussion still going on. So he's been very impressive. He's been reliable. I mean, that Baltimore Ravens game in week 2 is already one of my favorite games of all time. That comeback we made in the 4th quarter. And I think now we're seeing, Tyreek Hill was a big advocate of Tua. He was calling him the most accurate quarterback in the league. And I think he's proven that this year. And I think, he's just been electric. And I think he's not lost the game he started, apart from the Bengals game. 5-1, I believe, as a starter this season. And his record as a starter overall is pretty impressive. And I think he is just a winner. And I think that with the AFC East as well, with the Bills losing, was it 1 win between 1st and 4th in that division? I think, there's every potential we could try and get, that division, especially if Josh Allen's injury is worse than we thought. I think there's certainly a division up for grabs. And I think that Jets game on the final day is going to be just really tense. It's going to be really good. And I think fantasy-wise, Tua has really benefited from Hill and Waddle, because he's getting the points from the yards after catch, etc. I think he definitely is. I'd say against the Browns, I think against Myles Garrett, I don't know whether this week is the right week to put him in, but maybe if he's there in the 4th, 5th round and he's still available, if he is by that point, I think go and get him, because I think when you've got Hill and you've got Waddle, I think they can make plays out of nothing, especially Hill. So I think, fourth and fifth round, I think absolutely go for Tua, because he is someone that has really benefited from having Tyreek Hill on his offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hill and Waddle both have, I believe, a top 2 round ADPs. But so if you draft one of them, real easy to come back on that third, fourth round, get a little bit of Tua too. And this is the only 2 players that if you actually like you could double stack in this format, you could double stack Hill and Waddle just because that target share is so concentrated. Tua. I mean, Mike McDaniels and Tua do a great job of getting the ball in their best players' hands. I mean, that's, it's fantastic. You see Hill and Waddle deliver every single week. It's very impressive. Tua has a lot of upside, and he kind of closes the first tier of guys, I think. I have, what would we say there? 4 guys in total. I'll be drafting them in the bulk of my leagues if I can. I'm not afraid to draft a quarterback a little bit earlier, especially considering that the quarterbacks make up such a high percentage of the scoring in this format with only 6 players. For the next one here, and this is kind of just next tier down. These guys, I'm not drafting quite as much, but Kyler Murray is still right there with he's a little bit hobbled. I'm just concerned a little bit about that rushing, and I'm a little concerned about the matchup too, which is why he's not up in the upper tier quarterbacks. But he's had a good. I believe he's quarterback six on the year still, or quarterback 7. Despite all the hate he's gotten, he's still a locked in fantasy starter. It gets been a little bit ugly. Sometimes, it's all second half driven. They get blown out of the water in the first half, and then Kyler Murray just runs around, flings the ball around, and ends up catching back up a little bit, saving his fantasy day. What are some of your impressions of the Arizona Cardinals offense right now?
Yeah, not really blown away by it. I think D-Hop has come back and made it look somewhat better, especially when you look at fantasy football, but Kyler Murray is not really. I don't think he's even been the same quarterback. I don't think we've seen as many dynamic plays as we saw in his first 2 or 3 years he's been in the league. I don't think this season he's even had those same kind of plays. But I think maybe now with D-Hop back, I think that gives him some sort of upside for the rest of the year. I don't know whether in this game is the best game to put him in, because I think even though the Rams are struggling, their pass defense is, one of the best. It's still 10th or 11th in the league when it comes to yards allowed, and it's 3rd in the league when it comes to rushing yards allowed. So I think for this week, I would avoid Kyler Murray this week, because I do think that Rams defense, even though it's 3-6, 3-7, whatever they are, I just don't think he's going to necessarily perform well on fantasy this week. But I think maybe against lesser teams, he's someone that you can still look at, because he still gets the rushing yards and still gets his ball to D-Hop. But yeah, not for me this week.
Yeah, it's been a weird year for Kyler Murray. I saw a really funny tweet. He's 0-2 since the new Call of Duty came out. People this poor guy. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals really, I've been furious. Like, just to even put that in the contract and have it out there, just like this guy's got mandatory studying to do. I mean, I think you don't put that in the contract to shame your quarterback like that, because now you invited this kind of criticism upon him for like the rest of his life. So
I think
who knows?
I think that as well with that. I think we've seen certain players. You think of the Butt Bundle as Mark Sanchez. You think of Sam Darnold seeing ghosts. And I think this thing is going to really basically be on his head the rest of his career.
Yep. Until he starts winning.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's going to happen under Cliff Kingsbury. But I think the Cardinals, that the screams of complete poor front office behavior, because that stuff shouldn't be out in the public. That stuff should purely be privately, because no one was mentioning that before this happened. No one was even thinking about Kyler Murray shouldn't be playing Call of Duty and all that. It's I think they've really done him a disservice, that Cardinals front office.
Yeah, I mean, you make people do performance-based contracts. Like this guy throws for 70 yards, Pro Bowl. But that's how they phrase it. They don't tell to stop playing video games essentially in the contract. So they ended up taking it out. But kind of the damage was done. So we not a zero impossibility that we see Kyler Murray at a different team next year. But I would anticipate him to be with the Cardinals going forward. Cliff Kingsbury is going to be on the hot seat. I feel like he just got a big contract. No,
yeah, until 2027. I think both him and Steve Keim both got new deals as well. But I do question why they gave him such a long deal, because I mean, I don't know whether the head coach's salary is part of the salary cap. I'm not sure whether that's just for players. But,
nope, just for players.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I think they should probably I think they may well just bite the bullet at some point, because I don't think I've seen anything from Cliff Kingsbury that's impressed me. I mean, everyone forgets that he was fired in college as well. And I don't think they had that great start last year, and you all saw that collapse. And I don't think this year has been any better. And I think really, if your quarterback is telling your head coach to calm down, I'm going to just remove the expletive he used. But if that's happening on the field, that really does give me a red flag in terms of it's a bit similar to the crowd in Denver telling Hackett when the clock was running down. That if Kyler Murray's telling Cliff Kingsbury to calm down when it should be the other way around, if anything, that is a massive red flag for me, and I just don't know whether he is the guy moving forward. And I think especially with everyone's talking about Dallas, but I think if Sean Payton's available, go and get him absolutely, because I think that I don't think Cliff Kingsbury has got he's had 3 years so far in the league, and he's done nothing, in my opinion, to convince me he is head coach worthy in the NFL.
I completely agree. It's just been a mess. When he has the game plays scripted out at the beginning of the game, the Cardinals don't do anything, and then they end up catching back up in the second half when it's just like, Kyler Murray, go run out there and do something. So completely agree. So those are my top 5. The next, I'll just gloss over this here because I want to dive into some tight end talk, which is the second most important position on Underdog, in my opinion. I have Trevor Lawrence here. Chiefs are just terrible. We give up points up to opposing quarterbacks and wide receivers. So love this matchup for Trevor Lawrence. Not someone I'm jumping up and down and getting just because I think that upside is a little bit limited with him just in that offense. But Trevor Lawrence is a nice dark horse in a couple of your drafts. Jumping into tight end, second most important position on Underdog. Just with the shallower lineups, quarterback and tight end make up so much more of your scoring. So every single Underdog $50,000 winner has had a top 3 tight end performance on their roster for that given week, except for last week, which was top 5. I can't remember who was on there, but it was a top 5 performance. So we are still looking for tight end with a high range of outcomes. So just some guys that I had listed here: Travis Kelce, T.J. Hawkinson, Zach Ertz in my top tier, with Greg Dulcich, Evan Ingram, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, and Pat Freiermuth on that next tier. Taysom Hill's a wild card candidate. Take him in one draft if you want to. But just starting off with Travis Kelce, I have no problem taking him in the first round. Such a big performance. It's Travis Kelce's having a great year. This man's a unicorn at the tight end position, especially just how desolate the position is. The Jaguars, I think. I guess they're 6th in points against tight ends, so they're it's a tough matchup, but I don't think it'll matter for Travis Kelce.
No, I think for me, I've got him in one league, and I don't ever leave him out apart from a bye week. I think every week he's guaranteed you points. He's just a point score machine, especially now Hill's gone. He's just taken up so much more receptions as well. And I think, again, against this, aforementioned pass defense we talked about with Jacksonville, I think for me, Kelce is by far, I think there's not many players you take, non-quarterback players you take in the whole league over Kelce for this week, especially. I think for me, if you got the first round, I think I would take him over any player really, except for maybe Mahomes and Fields.
People agree with you. He has the 1.7 ADP, so he's the first or second player taken at most drafts.
Yeah, I think I've said it before, I think he's the best tight end of all time for how he performs in both the regular season and the postseason. His stats are just incredible. I mean, he's getting more yards than a lot of receivers, and he's from a tight end, which, in years gone by, years ago, it was just a blocking position. And I think it's developed so much now where, it's just, I got to watch him in Arrowhead score 4 touchdowns. I've seen him now score 5 in my lifetime live. Saw him score against as well. He's just, for me, electric. And I think I'd rather have in my fantasy team than Kelce, aside from Cooper Kupp.
I love it. Top 3 tight end every week except for one. He's just consistent, delivers every single week. I think I'm going to fire him up in lineups until the wheels fall off for this guy, and hopefully not anytime soon. The next player I have up who's significantly further down in drafts, it's Travis Kelce, and then a significant 4-round drop, and then you see T.J. Hawkinson is the second tight end taken already only in his second week with Minnesota. But, it's a little bit of a tough matchup. Buffalo's the ninth best team against opposing tight ends. But, yeah, 8 catches, 70 yards in that first game. How do you feel about TJ Hawkinson's chances this week?
Not particularly great because, as I said before, I think that pass defense from the Bills is one of the best for yards allowed this year. So, as well, I think if he was playing them in Detroit, I would like it a lot more because he'd have a lot of the targets and receptions. But I think when you've got, Dalvin Cook, you've got, Thielen and Jefferson, and that, I think he'll get targets, obviously. But I just don't know whether this week is the best week to have him. I think, if you get to the 7th, 8th round and he's there, take him. But I don't think he should be anyone you should be considering taking as one of your top tight ends for me personally, purely because that Bills matchup.
Yeah, I agree. And, people aren't overreacting to that first game. He's the 24th player taken, which is pretty late for tight end. So, that's so I think a lot of that risk is baked in. The next player is Zach Ertz. He's the 3rd tight end taken, 29.7 ADP. It's hard to say what these matchups, but considering so many tight ends don't hardly get any receiving yards, the matchups against tight ends, when you look it up, it's always tough to gauge just because, man, if a team played Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, they're going to be one of the worst teams against tight ends. You know what I mean? Everyone else is just kind of meh. But they are 7th against opposing tight ends, so another tough matchup. But Zach Ertz is double-digit fantasy points in all but one game. Just a rock-solid floor. I think that you can, just an easy guy to count on. Kyler Murray's going to be throwing the ball. It's always going to be playing from behind, throwing that ball. How do you feel about Zach Ertz maybe going forward?
Yeah, I think that, he's in the top 5 this year anyway. And I think that I do question now, D-Hop's back. Maybe some of his targets been taken away. Whereas before maybe he was Murray's go-to guy. But I do think in this matchup especially, I think that the Rams, they have got the 11th best defense when it comes to yards allowed, but they are still leaking points. So I do think that he's someone you can consider, maybe as like a 5th or 6th round option, because he's still getting points. And I think that Rondell Moore, DeAndre Hopkins are getting obviously points as well. But I think as a tight end, I think Ertz is definitely almost rolling back the years this year with some of his fantasy performances this season.
Yeah, it's Zach Ertz. Yeah, it looks like the Philadelphia Eagles of old a little bit. So it's super good. Yeah, I've been starting Zach Ertz in a lot of lineups. He's a consistent target of me in these Underdog Battle Royale pools, just because he's always going a little bit later. And I feel like you have a really good chance of getting that top 3, top 5 tight end performance. Maybe that ceiling's just lacking a little bit, which puts him back a little bit in drafts. That's a tier for me. And then I just have a few other guys here that, with just some upside. I'm really trying to lock in and get one of those top few guys. Travis Kelce in every single draft I can if he's available. If you have a pick and Travis Kelce's there, draft him because that'll be important to lock in that position. But yeah, next up, Greg Dulcich, 33.1. I made a joke this week. I redid my dynasty rankings this week, and I have him at tight end 12, a tight end 1 already after 3 weeks. It's just such a desolate position with hardly any upside that it's really easy to move him up like that. The sky's the limit for this guy. He's the 2nd target behind Jerry Jeudy right now these last few weeks. What are you seeing from him so far?
Yeah, I love this pick. I think if you can get Dulcich, I think players to have this week. On the sleeper app, he's had 3 straight double-digit performances on fantasy football, and he's coming up against the 7th worst pass defense in the league. So I think when it comes to yards allowed, so I think Dulcich, he proved it recently. I think Russell Wilson seems to be trusting him a lot more than maybe some of his receivers. So I think also because he's not got the name, I think you can get him late on in the draft because people are going to look at, they can look at not Andrews maybe this week, but Kelsey, they're going to look at Hawkins, at Zach Ertz. They're not really going to be thinking automatically, I'm going to go for Dulcich. So I think for that reason alone, you can maybe get him quite late on in the draft because for that reason.
He's just been super impressive so far. He had 80 yards on one drive that got Denver out of their own end zone a couple weeks ago, and they were on bye last week. But super impressive. Like I said, he's been out targeting Sutton this last couple weeks. He has a 17.7% target share these last few weeks, 74.4 receiving grade. And he's been fantastic. So I think you can kind of lock him in lineups going forward as a low tight end one with upside. So I'm super excited about him. And, that's probably another little tier break for me. I have Cole Kmet written down just because it's a juicy matchup with Detroit, who's 28th against opposing tight ends. Evan Ingram, same thing. Chiefs are 24th against tight ends. It's the Chiefs get burned by everybody. So you could eat Evan Ingram as long as he's healthy. I know he's on the injury report. Another guy I feel pretty safe starting this week. Dalton Schultz, target volume with Dak Prescott, Pat Freiermuth, Taysom Hill. Do you have any favorites among those guys I listed?
I like Schultz. I do. I think he struggled on fantasy early on in the season. I don't think I think in recent weeks he is performing much better on fantasy, and I think now he's got Dak Prescott back. I think obviously they've had a connection for a few seasons now, so I like Schultz a lot more. I don't really like the Ingram thing because he's had a lot of single-digit performances on fantasy football. And these are all against good teams. He's had single digits against the Chargers, the Eagles. He got single digits against the Raiders, despite them scoring 27 points in total on the game. The Jaguars only got 1.80 last week, and only got 9 against a poor Indianapolis team. So, and add in the injury concern as well. I'm not really a fan of Ingram. I think he is the last tight end I would take out of those players. I think I would take Hawkinson, Ertz, Kelsey, Schultz, and Dolchich over him any day of the week.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and it's like I said, we're shooting for upside in those positions. Top 5, top 3 every week besides this last week. The grand prize winners had a performance from their tight end. Top 5 last week, so shooting for that upside. Thank you for your input on that. And with that here, we're just going to finish up with some wide receiver running back values, and then we'll dive in. I'll just give a brief description. I haven't actually got a chance to do any drafts yet. We're going to do that last week, but Underdog Fantasy is doing new playoff best ball. It's going to be for when the playoffs start. So, you draft players. It's you have 6, I believe it's 6 rounds. So you're drafting 6 players, and you're factoring in who you think is going to get. They're starting the drafts now, and they run the drafts all the way through January when the playoffs start. So, you do them now, you're playing a little bit of guessing game with who could be in the playoffs and who could not be in the playoffs. But in that same breath, you could also, with that risk, becomes a little bit of reward because you're getting some players. Maybe the Bucs still have a great chance of making the playoffs, and because of the division that they're in, and you could see those Bucs players because of their record going way later in drafts. So there's some value to be found as well with that risk. So we'll dive into that, but just with some wide receiver values that I love really quick. I have Christian Kirk here, 32nd player. I mean, the Chiefs just love giving up points to opposing wide receiver one. Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams this year. They just continually get burned. Marquise Brown. It's just been a rough year for the Chiefs cornerbacks. They're the 7th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And Christian Kirk has 8+ targets in his last 3 games. How do you feel about the matchup?
Yeah, I think with that one, I do think that they are Christian Kirk is one I would take because he's having a fairly good season despite the money they took, but also I don't think they're going to use Etienne too much or have much success with Etienne because they have got the 4th best run defense when it comes to yards allowed. So I think Kirk is a player I'd take wide receiver wise for that reason alone, because I think he'll get a lot of targets, and I think that they'll have issues when it comes to using Etienne unless they use him in the passing game. So yeah, Kirk for me is one I would take.
Yeah, and in that 5th, 6th round range, your last pick potentially, absolutely give me that upside. Alan Lazard, same deal, 34.9, going borderline undrafted in this format. He has a 20% target share in 5 straight games, double-digit fantasy points in each of those 5 games too. I think he's a wide receiver too now. The Packers have no one else. I think he's locked in top 24 wide receiver for me. How do you feel?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's someone that I think it was 2 seasons ago, if not 3 years ago, where he was doing really well in fantasy before he got an injury that pretty much ended his season. And I think that this season, with Adams gone, everyone knows what's happened there. I think he has turned into Rodgers' favorite target. I mean, Tonyan's been in and out fancy wise. I thought he'd be his number one target. And I think that apart from that, I mean, Romeo Dobbs I like, but he's a rookie, same as Christian Watson. And I think Lazard is reaping the benefits of that. And I think he is definitely, for me, the one receiver you take from the Packers because he is getting the load when it comes to targets as well. And I think he is, the only player I would take from the Packers in any sense right now in both sides of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just I was on Alan Lazard before the season. I was just pounding the table to draft him. So I was super disappointed to see stuff. Man, I had so many guys I was a truther on. I was a truther on Javonte Williams, Breece Hall, Michael Thomas. I just feel like I've just gotten screwed by these injuries. I feel like I'm just crying myself to sleep, telling my process was right. If they just stayed on the field, I would have been right. But I should have known that with Michael Thomas, I guess. But I was I'm a little butthurt about it, as you can tell. But the last wide receiver I had up here, Juju Smith-Schuster. First 5 weeks of the season, wide receiver 35 was his best finish. The last 3 weeks, he's finished as a wide receiver 1. He's becoming that locked-in second option behind Travis Kelce. He's established himself as the best wide receiver on the team. Well, do you see this continuing going forward in the future?
Yeah, particularly against the Jags, I think he's going to have a field day there. My one issue with Chiefs receivers is that he does seem to spread out the ball a lot to either him or McCall Hardman. So I think in terms of, I think as a flex option, I think you take him. But I think as your wide receiver 1 and 2, I do question whether for the whole season he's the right guy to have, because I do think Mahomes, part of his brilliance is that he's got such a balanced offense now. You don't know whether he's throwing it to McCall Hardman, to Travis Kelce, to Marcus Valdes-Scantling, to Juju. But I think, certainly as a maybe 5th, 6th, 7th round option, if he's there, take him because he will get you points. But I don't think you should really touch him in the first 3 or 4 rounds.
Yep, I completely agree with that. It's just, there's more risk. So he's going, what is it? Fourth round. It's 24. 6 picks per round. He's the 24th player taken. He's going on that 4th round. That's value's fine to me. There's a lot of risk there, but this offense, Patrick Mahomes is throwing the ball so much that there should be room for 3 wide receivers to succeed. McCall Hardman, it's a little shallow for me to draft McCall Hardman. It was just, 36 players taken, but you have a draft, you're at that last pick, wouldn't be afraid to throw maybe McCall Hardman in draft 2. He's been fantastic these last few weeks. We'll just close up with some running back values here. Tony Pollard, 27th player taken. Obviously people have that Zeke factor, but his efficiency metrics are outstanding. Just 7th in yards per carry, 3rd in breakaway run rate, 3rd in yards per touch. Those stats courtesy of Player Profiler. A lot of these stats courtesy of Player Profiler. Thanks so much to Matt Kelly, the Podfather, for putting all that stuff out there. But yeah, Tony Pollard, feel like Jerry Jones just won't give us Tony Pollard season. Do you think this will be kind of do you think that was an abnormality last week and we'll just see a split backfield going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do like Tony Pollard. Packers are in dire straits. I mean, they're just like really performing badly. And I think, we've got the 5th worst run defense in the league, the Packers, when it comes to yards allowed. And Pollard is pretty much guaranteed points every week. I think he's had double-digit scores each week on fantasy pretty much all year. I think that I don't think Zeke. I think I don't think Zeke is getting his. I think they are slowly realizing now that maybe Pollard is the guy, and I think that contract has really affected the Cowboys. But at the same time, I do like the fact they're limiting his game, because we've seen a lot of running backs in recent years. Zeke was one of them, actually, that they get used so much in their first few years, and then it can often affect them injury-wise. So I do like the fact they're keeping him sort of a bit limited, because when he does play, then he's absolutely electric. But I think next season, maybe the year after, he'll be the number 1 guy, and I think Ezekiel Elliott. I think his time is running out in Dallas, unfortunately, as a number 1 back. And I think that Pollard, certainly in a dynasty league, I've got him in 1, absolutely, because I think going forward, whether he may even get traded in the offseason, I don't know whether he may want to go somewhere where he's the number 1 guy. And I think if that's the case, get him now if you can on dynasty, because next, if he goes to a new team where he's the number 1 back, I guarantee he won't be available past the 2nd or 3rd round in a 10 or 12 person league. And I think that he is against the Packers, who are in such bad form, you absolutely take him this week.
Yeah, Packers are a mess right now. The defensive stats they're pretty good for the year, but they've been getting they've been kind of getting roasted these last couple of weeks. So it's a good matchup for Tony Pollard, in my opinion. I also had Dameon Pierce here, 23rd player taken. Since week 4, he's had a top 13 running back. Since week 4, 4 top 13 running back finishes, top 20 plus rushing attempts plus receptions since week 2. Just getting a ton of opportunity in this offense. It's time to put some respect on this man's game, and he's becoming one of the just the premier backs in this league right now. He's 4th round pick. It's tough to get away from the draft capital, but it's also tough to look away from how he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned before about sort of trades you regret, and I did get rid of Dameon Pierce after week 3, I think, and in the same week I did trade away. It's probably my worst ever trade I've ever done now. I traded away Ramondre Stevenson because I was concerned about targets for Chase Edmonds. That is probably one of the worst draft trades ever. Oh my God. I don't know what. I mean, Stevenson, I picked him in about 4 different leagues and I traded him away in about 3. And I think the same thing with Dameon Pierce. I mean, I watched him last week against the Eagles in Houston and he was just the one positive of that Houston offense. And I think he got 131 yards, I believe, last week against the Eagles in what was a pretty poor offensive performance. And I do think that he had a lot of hype coming into the draft, especially as like a late round pick on fantasy as well. And he's a late round pick, I believe, in the real draft. And yeah, he's just been so good the last few weeks. And I think that, you think about that team that played the Chiefs in that famous loss in the divisional round. Imagine if you had that team, if they had a good running back like him. So imagine if you had Dameon Pierce alongside Deshaun Watson, JJ Watt, Hopkins. I think that team may have gone a lot further. And I think that it's a shame for the Houston Texans that they've now found a good running back, after years of not having one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just been incredible. I was, he wasn't a huge target of mine in fantasy drafts or anything like that. Obviously when the hype train started building in August, I started paying attention, but especially in that early summer, he wasn't a huge target. I liked him. I drafted in some dynasty leagues when he was dipping in that late 2nd round, 3rd round range. But I thought he might be more of a 1-year stopgap player as opposed to maybe potentially the running back of the future in Houston. So super exciting for him. Last player we will talk about today, I have Dalvin Cook, 25.7. There's no standout metrics on Dalvin Cook. He doesn't have any efficiency metrics that I would point to suggest this. It's a relatively tough matchup, but he does have 4 straight top 14 RB performances. And this is Dalvin Cook, one of the most talented running backs in the league. And that's the only basis I have on that. Just seems like when you have a player with that upside going in the 5th round, that I'm willing to take that risk there. You talked about Dalvin Cook a little bit earlier. Do you have an outlook on this game at all?
Yeah, I think for me, going back to Dalvin Cook's fantasy value, I do feel that he is, someone you have to take, especially if you mentioned the 5th round, like you say. I do think that he's someone you absolutely take because even though I think the Bills, are great defensively, I don't know how much I rate them on defense. At the same time, I think Dalvin Cook, if they are struggling, especially in a passing game against that Bills pass defense, I think that Cook will get a lot of the carries, and I think we've seen that already in recent weeks. He's getting more and more. I think the start of the year, maybe but I think for me, a player like him, there's a few players in the league that you have to play every week regardless, and I think he's one of them because he is basically almost every week a guaranteed point to make on fantasy. I think that he may be the key to winning this game over maybe Thielen or Jefferson.
Yeah, I agree. I think this could end up being a Dalvin Cook game, especially if we don't see Josh Allen play, and this is a little bit more of a low-scoring affair. I was going to talk about this best ball stuff, but you know what? I'm just going to dive into it all next week. So, we'll end it there. But what's the deal? Where are you heading? Where are some of the next couple places you're heading to, my man?
So I'm currently in Charlotte, Carolina. I'm there until Saturday morning. And then I've got a fairly busy week, so I'm going to Tennessee on Saturday. So I'm going to watch Titans Broncos on the Sunday. Then I've got a few non-sport stuff, like I'm going to Graceland in Memphis on the Tuesday, provided there's no delays with my bus, because I have got a tour on the Monday of a mountain tour, which gets me back into the bus station about 2 hours before my next one leaves. So I've got a bit of a tight schedule, but hopefully that can pull off because I really want to go and see Gracelands. And then I fly on Wednesday to Green Bay, and everyone can tell from that what game I'm going to. Titans Packers on Thursday night football, which I'm so excited for because it is a stadium, the mecca of NFL stadiums. It really is something. And then I'm going to Pittsburgh, seeing a family friend out there who lives there. And provided we can get tickets, we're going to go to watch the Steelers against the Bengals in Pittsburgh. We're hoping the Bengals can lose.
I like it. So that's such a fun trip. I don't think anybody has gone to Green Bay for any other reason other than to go to a Green Bay Packer football game. So no disrespect to the people of Green Bay. It's a small town. I think you guys are aware of that. But that's awesome, man. And how about some of the stuff you're working on going forward? You got some podcasts or any articles you got coming out soon?
Yeah, so I'm writing for many different articles. So websites writing articles. So I'm still working for DolphinsTalk.com, which is one of the biggest Dolphins websites in the world. Still writing for The Touchdown, which is a British-based NFL site. Pro Football Mania, which is a site, American-based website. And then also I've got a fairly new podcast, but it's sort of changed networks. The Across the Pod podcast, which is obviously a play on words on Across the Pond. NFL Chat. We do NFL week previews where we predict every game and have a leaderboard, and then we review the action as well. And I try to get every week a fan of the team, an NFL fan, and then on the same episode in a separate recording, have a fan of the team the Dolphins played. So I had a Bears fan on this week. I'm going to try and get a Browns fan on next week, and do that. And also, obviously, I know this is mainly a US audience, but I am potentially doing some stuff for UK TV at the Green Bay game for Channel 5. I did some work for the Broncos-Colts game, so I'm hoping for a better game this time. And I'm hoping, all fingers crossed, that goes through, and I'm hoping to get some more TV work out in America. So it's all going well. Just got my master's degree in sports journalism, so I'm hoping that now I can make what I do as a hobby a full-time gig.
I love that, man. Congratulations to you. That sounds fantastic. I love all this pods and everything like that. But thanks for joining me today. I'll be doing I do weekly articles for SGPN. 5 Yard Rush is a UK-based website, and I do a lot. I do a weekly article, Dynasty Risers and Fallers for them. They're all fantastic. I also do a weekly biggest headlines, fantasy football headlines article for the Fantasy Coaches podcast. So you'll see me all there. You'll see this podcast every week. So thanks for coming on, Andy. I really appreciate it. Of course.
Before I forget, I also do a YouTube channel called Euro Trips with a Z rather than an S, where I've done vlogs for pretty much every game I've been to so far. So do check it out. Euro Trips. So Euro, then TRIPZ. I've done vlogs for all but 3 of the games I've been to. So do check it out and try and build that subscriber count up.
Yeah, this guy doesn't stop moving. My goodness. All right. Well, hey, good luck with all that, man. Check this guy out. Super knowledgeable sportscaster, and you'll be seeing him a lot more. I have no doubt about it. Good luck this weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining us.